Chapter 26, The Book of Marriage. Chapter 1, mentioning the command of the Messenger of Allah concerning marriage, his wives, and what Allah, the Mighty and Sublime, permitted to his Prophet when it is forbidden to other people, because of his virtue and high status. Narrated Atta. It was narrated that Atta said, "We attended the funeral of Maimuna, the wife of the Prophet, with Ibn Abbas in Sarif. Ibn Abbas said, 'This is Maimuna. When you lift up her bier, do not rock it nor shake it. The Messenger of Allah had 9 wives, and he used to give a share of his time to 8 of them, and not to 1. Great Sahih. Narrated Ibn Abbas. It was narrated that Ibn Abbas said, "When the Messenger of Allah died, he had 9 wives. He used to be intimate with all of them except one, who had given her day and night to Aisha." Great Sahih. Narrated Anas. Anas narrated that the Prophet used to go around to his wives in a single night, and at that time he had 9 wives. Great Sahih. Narrated Aisha. It was narrated that Aisha said, "I used to feel jealous of those women who offered themselves in marriage to the Prophet, and I said, would a free woman offer herself? Then Allah the Mighty and Sublime revealed, you can postpone whom you will of them, and you may receive whom you will. I said, by Allah, I see that your Lord is quick to respond to your wishes." Great Sahih. Narrated Sa'al bin Sa'd. It was narrated that Sa'al bin Sa'd said, "I was among the people when a woman said, I offer myself in marriage to you, O Messenger of Allah. See what you think of me." A man stood up and said, "Marry me to her." He said, "Go and find something, even if it is an iron ring." So he went, but he could not find anything, not even an iron ring. So the Messenger of Allah said, "Do you have memorized any surahs of the Quran?" He said, "Yes." So he married him to her on the basis of what he knew of surahs of the Quran. Great Sahih. Chapter 2, what Allah enjoined upon his Prophet and forbade to other people in order to bring him closer to him. Narrated Aisha. It was narrated from Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, that the Messenger of Allah came to her when Allah commanded him to give his wives the choice. Aisha said, "The Messenger of Allah started with me and said, I am going to tell you something, but you do not have to rush until you consult your parents." She said, "He knew that my parents would not tell me to leave him." Then the Messenger of Allah said, "O Prophet, say to your wives, if you desire the life of this world and its glitter, then come, I will make a provision for you and set you free in a handsome manner." I said, "Do I need to consult my parents about this? I choose Allah and His Messenger and the abode of the hereafter." Great Sahih. Narrated Aisha. It was narrated that Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, said, The Messenger of Allah gave his wives the choice of staying with him. Was it divorce? Great Sahih. Narrated Aisha. It was narrated that Aisha said, "The Messenger of Allah gave us the choice and we chose him, so there was no divorce." Great Sahih. Narrated Atta. It was narrated that Atta said, Aisha said, "The Messenger of Allah did not die until a woman had been made lawful to him." Great Sahih. Narrated Aisha. It was narrated that Aisha said, The messenger of Allah did not die until Allah permitted him to marry whatever woman he wanted. Great Sahih. Chapter 3. Encouragement to marry. Narrated Alqama. It was narrated that Alqama said, I was with Ibn Masud while he was with Uthman. May Allah be pleased with him. And Uthman said, the messenger of Allah came out to some Fitya young men. Abu Abdurrahman said, I did not understand the word Fitya as I would want, and said, whoever among you can afford it, let him get married, for it is more effective in lowering the gaze and guarding chastity, and whoever cannot, then fasting will be a restraint, vidya, for him. Great Sahih. Narrated Alqama. It was narrated from Alqama that Uthman said to Ibn Masud, shall I arrange for you to marry a young girl? Abdullah called Alqama, and he told the people that the Prophet said, whoever among you can afford it, let him get married, for it is more effective in lowering the gaze and guarding chastity, and whoever cannot afford it, then let him fast, for it will be a restraint for him. Great Sahih. Narrated Alqama. It was narrated from Alqama and Al-Aswad that Abdullah said, the messenger of Allah said to us, whoever among you can afford it, let him get married, and whoever cannot, then he should fast, for it will be a restraint, vidya, for him. Abu Abdurrahman said, the mention of Al-Aswad in this hadith is not preserved. Great Sahih. Narrated Abdullah. It was narrated that Abdullah said, the messenger of Allah said to us, O young men, whoever among you can afford it, let him get married, for it is more effective in lowering the gaze and guarding chastity, and whoever cannot, then he should fast, for it will be a restraint, vidya, for him. Great Sahih. Narrated Abdullah. It was narrated that Abdullah said, the messenger of Allah said to us, O young men, whoever among you can afford it, let him get married, and he quoted the same hadith. Great Sahih. Narrated Alqama. It was narrated that Alqama said, I was walking with Abdullah in Mina, and he was met by Uthman, who stood with him and spoke with him. He said, O Abu Abdurrahman, shall I not marry you to a young girl? Perhaps she will remind you of when you were younger. Abdullah said, as you say that, it reminds me that the messenger of Allah said to us, O young men, whoever among you can afford it, let him get married. Great Sahih. Chapter 4. Prohibition of celibacy. Narrated Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas. It was narrated that Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas said, the messenger of Allah forbade Uthman to be celibate. If he had given him permission, we would have castrated ourselves. Great Sahih. Narrated Aisha. It was narrated from Aisha that the messenger of Allah forbade celibacy. Great Sahih. Narrated Samura bin Jundab. It was narrated from Samura bin Jundab that the Prophet forbade celibacy. Abu Abdurrahman said, Qatada is more reliable and better preserves narrations than Ashat, but the hadith of Ashat here appears to be the correct one. Allah Most High knows best. Great Sahih. Narrated Abu Salama. It was narrated from Abu Salama that Abu Huraira said, I said, O Messenger of Allah, I am a young man, and I fear hardship for myself, but I cannot afford to marry. Should I castrate myself? The Prophet turned away from him until he said it 3 times. Then the Prophet said, O Abu Huraira, the pen is dried concerning what you are going to face, so it is up to you whether you castrate yourself or not. Abu Abdurrahman al-Nasai said, Al-Afsai did not hear this narration from As-Sudi, and this hadith is Sahih. Yunus reported it from As-Sudi. Great Sahih. Narrated Sa'd bin Hisham. It was narrated from Sa'd bin Hisham that he came to the mother of the believers, Aisha. He said, I want to ask you about celibacy. What do you think about it? She said, do not do that. Have you not heard that Allah, the Mighty and Sublime, says, and indeed we sent messengers before you, and made for them wives and offspring, so do not be celibate. Great Sahih. Narrated Anas. It was narrated from Anas that there was a group of the companions of the Prophet, one of whom said, I will not marry woman. Another said, I will not eat meat. Another said, I will not sleep on a bed. Another said, I will fast and not break my fast. News of that reached the Messenger of Allah, and he praised Allah and then said, what is the matter with people who say such and such? But I pray and I sleep, I fast and I break my fast, and I marry a woman. Whoever turns away from my sunnah is not of me. Great Sahih. Chapter 5. Allah will help the one who marries, seeking to keep himself chaste. Narrated Abu Huraira. It was narrated from Abu Huraira that the Messenger of Allah said, there are three who are promised the help of Allah: the mukatab who wants to buy his freedom, the one who gets married seeking to keep himself chaste, and the mujahid who fights in the cause of Allah. Mukatab, the slave who has made a contract of manumission. Great Hassan. Chapter 6. Marrying Virgins. Narrated Jabir. It was narrated that Jabir said, I got married, then I came to the Prophet, and he said, have you got married, O Jabir? I said, yes. He said, to a virgin or to a previously married woman? I said, to a previously married woman. He said, why not a virgin? So you could play with her and she could play with you. Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir. It was narrated that Jabir said, the Messenger of Allah met me and said, O Jabir, have you got married to a woman since I last saw you? I said, yes, O Messenger of Allah. He said, to a virgin or to a previously married woman? I said, to a previously married woman. He said, why not a virgin, so she could play with you? Great Sahih. Chapter 7. A woman marrying someone who is similar in age to her. Narrated Abdullah bin Burayda. It was narrated from Abdullah bin Burayda that his father said, Abu Bakr and Umar, may Allah be pleased with them, proposed marriage to Fatima, but the Messenger of Allah said, she is young. Then Ali proposed marriage to her, and he married her to him. Great Sahih. Chapter 8. A freed slave marrying an Arab woman. Narrated Ubaydullah bin Abdullah bin Utbah. It was narrated from Ubaydullah bin Abdullah bin Utbah that during the reign of Marwan, Abdullah bin Amr bin Uthman, who was a young man, issued a final divorce to the daughter of Sa'id bin Zayd, whose mother was Bint Qais. Her maternal aunt, Fatima bint Qais, sent word to her telling her to move from the house of Abdullah bin Amr. Marwan heard of that, and he sent word to the daughter of Sa'id telling her to go back to her home and asking her why she had moved from her home before her Iddah was over. She sent word to him, telling him that her maternal aunt had told her to do that. Fatima bint Qais said that she had been married to Abu Amr bin Hafs. And when the Messenger of Allah appointed Ali bin Abi Talib as governor of Yemen, he went out with him and sent word to her that she was divorced with the third talaq, he told Al-Harith bin Hisham and Ayas bin Abi Rai'ah to spend on her. She sent word to Al-Harith and Ayas, asking them what her husband had told them to spend on her, and they said, "By Allah, she has no right to any maintenance from us, unless she is pregnant, and she cannot come into our home without our permission." She said that she came to the Messenger of Allah and told him about that, and he stated that they were correct. Fatima said, "Where should I move to, O Messenger of Allah?" He said, "Move to the home of Ibn Maktum, the blind man whom Allah the Mighty and Sublime named in his book." Fatima said, "So I observed my Iddah there. He was a man who has lost his sight, so I used to take off my garments in his house until the Messenger of Allah married me to Usama bin Zayd." Marwan criticized her for that and said, "I have never heard this hadith from anyone before you. I will continue to follow the ruling that the people have been following." Great Sahih. Narrated Aisha. It was narrated from Aisha that Abu Hudayfa bin Utbah bin Rabi'a bin Abd Shams, who was one of those who had been present at Badr with the Messenger of Allah, adopted Salim and married him to his brother's daughter. Hind bint al-Walid bin Utbah bin Rabi'a bin Abd Shams, and he was a freed slave of an Ansari woman, as the Messenger of Allah had adopted Zayd. During the Jahiliyyah, if a man adopted someone, the people would call him his son, and he would inherit from his legacy until Allah the Mighty and Sublime revealed about that. Call them by the names of their fathers, that is more just with Allah. But if you know not their fathers' names, call them your brothers in faith, and mawalikum, your freed slaves. Then if a person's father's name was not known, he would be their freed slave and brother in faith. Great Sahih. Narrated Aisha. It was narrated from Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, and Salama, the wife of the Prophet, that Abu Hudayfa bin Utbah bin Rabi'a bin Abd Shams, who was one of those who had been present at Badr with the Messenger of Allah, adopted Salim, who was the freed slave of an Ansari woman, as the Messenger of Allah had adopted Zayd bin Haritha. Abu Hudayfa bin Utbah married Salim to his brother's daughter. Hind bint al-Walid bin Utbah bin Rabi'a. Hind bint al-Walid bin Utbah was one of the first Muhajir women, and at that time she was one of the best single women of the Quraysh. When Allah the Mighty and Sublime revealed the following concerning Zayd bin Haritha: call them by the names of their fathers, that is more just with Allah. But if you know not their fathers' names, call them your brothers in faith and mawalikum, your freed slaves. Each of them went back to being called after his father, and if a person's father was unknown, he was named after his former masters. Great Sahih. Chapter 9. Nobility. Narrated Ibn Burayda. It was narrated from Ibn Burayda that his father said, the Messenger of Allah said, the nobility of the people of this world, that which they always go to, is wealth. Great Sahih. Chapter 10. For what should a woman be married? Narrated Jabir. It was narrated from Jabir that he married a woman at the time of the Messenger of Allah, and the Prophet met him and said, "Have you got married, O Jabir?" He said, "Yes." He said, "A virgin or a previously married woman?" I said, "A previously married woman." He said, "Why not a virgin who would play with you?" I said, "O Messenger of Allah, I have sisters, and I did not want her to come between them and I." He said, "That's better than a woman may be married for her religious commitment, her wealth or her beauty. You should choose the one who is religiously committed. May your hands be rubbed with dust, may you prosper." Great Sahih. Chapter 11. It is disliked to marry one who is infertile. Narrated Makil bin Yasar. It was narrated that Makil bin Yasar said, "A man came to the Messenger of Allah and said, I have found a woman who is from a good family and of good status, but she does not bear children. Should I marry her?" He told him not to. Then he came to him a second time, and he told him not to marry her. Then he came to him a third time, and he told him not to marry her. Then he said, "Marry the one who is fertile and loving, for I will boast of your great numbers." Great Hassan. Chapter 12. Marrying an adulteress. Narrated Amr bin Shu'aib. It was narrated from Amr bin Shu'aib from his grandfather, that Martad bin Abi Martad al-Ghanawi, a strong man, who used to take the prisoners from Makkah to Al-Madinah. I said, I arranged with a man to bring him from Makkah to Al-Madinah. There was a prostitute in Mecca who was called Anak, and she was his friend. She came out and saw my shadow on the wall and said, "Who is this?" "Martad." "Welcome, O Martad, come tonight and stay at our place." I said, "O Anak, the Messenger of Allah has forbidden adultery." She said, "O people of the tents, this porcupine is the one who is taking your prisoners from Mecca to Al-Madinah. I headed toward the mountain of Al-Kandama, and 8 men came after me. They came and stood over my head, and they urinated, and their urine reached me, but Allah caused them not to see me. Then I went to my companion, the prisoner, and brought him to Al-Arak, where I undid his feathers. Then I came to the Messenger of Allah and said, "O Messenger of Allah, shall I marry Anak?" He remained silent and did not answer me. Then the following was revealed: "And the adulterous fornicator, none marries her except an adulterer, fornicator, or an idolater." He called me and recited them to me and said, "Do not marry her." He called me and recited them to me and said, "Do not marry her." Great Hassan. Narrated Ibn Abbas. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas that a man came to the Messenger of Allah and said, "I have a wife who is one of the most beloved of the people to me, but she does not object if anyone touches her." He said, "Divorce her." He said, "I cannot do without her." He said, "Then stay with her as much as you need to." Great Sahih. Chapter 13. The prohibition of marrying adulteresses. Narrated Abu Huraira. It was narrated from Abu Huraira that the Prophet said, "Women are married for 4 things: their wealth, their nobility, their beauty, and their religious commitment. Choose the one who is religiously committed. May your hands be rubbed with dust." Great Sahih. Chapter 14. Which woman is best? Narrated Abu Huraira. It was narrated that Abu Huraira said, "It was said to the Messenger of Allah, which woman is best? He said, the one who makes him happy when he looks at her, obeys him when he commands her, and she does not go against his wishes with regard to herself nor her wealth." Great Hassan. Chapter 15. The Righteous Woman. Narrated Abdullah bin Amr bin Alas. It was narrated from Abdullah bin Amr bin Alas that the Messenger of Allah said, "This world is all temporary conveniences, and the best temporary convenience of this world is a righteous woman." Great Sahih. Chapter 16. The Jealous Woman. Narrated Anas. It was narrated from Anas that they said, "O Messenger of Allah, why don't you marry a woman from the Ansar?" He said, "They are very, very jealous." Great Sahih. Chapter 17. It is permissible to look before marriage. Narrated Abu Huraira. It was narrated that Abu Huraira said, "A man proposed to a woman from among the Ansar, and the Messenger of Allah said to him, 'Have you seen her?' He said no, so he told him to look at her." Great Sahih. Narrated Al-Mughira bin Shuba. It was narrated that Al-Mughira bin Shuba said, "I proposed marriage to a woman during the time of the Messenger of Allah. And the Prophet said, 'Have you seen her?' I said no. He said, 'Look at her, for that is more likely to create love between you.'" Great Sahih. Chapter 18. Getting married in Shawwal. Narrated Udwa. It was narrated from Udwa that Aisha said, "The Messenger of Allah married me in Shawwal, and my marriage was consummated in Shawwal." Aisha liked for her women's marriages to be consummated in Shawwal. "And which of his wives was more beloved to him than me?" Great Sahih. Chapter 19. Proposal of Marriage. Narrated Amir bin Shurabil Ash-Shabi. Amir bin Shurabil Ash-Shabi narrated that he heard Fatima bint Qais, who was one of the first Muhajir women, say, "Abdur Rahman bin Auf proposed marriage to me, along with others of the companions of Muhammad, and the Messenger of Allah proposed that I marry his freed slave, Usama bin Zayd. I was told that the Messenger of Allah had said, 'Whoever loves me, let him love Usama.' When the Messenger of Allah spoke to me, I said, 'My affairs are in your hands. Marry me to whomever you wish.' He said, 'Go to Sharik.' Sharik was a rich Ansari woman who used to spend a great deal in the cause of Allah, and she always had a lot of guests. I said, 'I will do that.' He said, 'Do not do that, for Sharik has a lot of guests, and I would not like your khimar to fall off, or your shins to become uncovered, and the people to see something of you that you do not want them to see. Rather go to your cousin, son of your paternal uncle, Abdullah bin Amr bin Maktum, who is a man of Banu Fir.' So I went to him." Great Sahih. Chapter 20. Prohibition of proposing marriage to a woman when someone else has already proposed to her. Narrated Ibn Umar. It was narrated from Ibn Umar that the Prophet said, "None of you should propose marriage to a woman when someone else has already proposed to her." Great Sahih. Narrated Abu Huraira. It was narrated that Abu Huraira said, "The Messenger of Allah said, do not artificially inflate prices. A resident should not sell for a Bedouin, A man should not offer more for something that has already been bought by his brother. No one should propose marriage to a woman when someone else has already proposed to her, and no woman should try to bring about the divorce of her sister in order to deprive her of the blessings that she has. Great Sahih. Narrated Abu Huraira. It was narrated from Abu Huraira that the Prophet said, "None of you should propose marriage to a woman when someone else has already proposed to her." Great Sahih. It was narrated from Abu Huraira that the Messenger of Allah said, "None of you should propose marriage to a woman when someone else has already proposed to her, unless he marries and he gives up the ID or gives him permission." Great Sahih. It was narrated from Abu Huraira that the Prophet said, "None of you should propose marriage to a woman when someone else has already proposed to her." Great Sahih. Chapter 21. Proposing marriage when the other suitor gives up the ID or gives permission. Abdullah bin Amr used to say, "The Messenger of Allah forbade offering more for something that has already been bought by his brother, or for a man to propose marriage to a woman when someone else has already proposed to her, unless the previous suitor gave up the ID or gave him permission." Great Sahih. It was narrated from Muhammad bin Abdur Rahman bin Tawban that they asked Fatima bint Qais about her story, and she said, "My husband divorced me 3 times, and he used to provide me with food that was not good." She said, "By Allah, if I were entitled to maintenance and accommodation, I would demand them, and I would not accept this." The deputy said, "You are not entitled to accommodation or maintenance." She said, "I came to the Prophet and told him about that, and he said, 'You are not entitled to accommodation nor maintenance. Observe your Iddah in the house of so and so." She said his companions used to go to her. Then he said, "Observe your Iddah in the house of Ibn Maktum, who is blind, and when your Iddah is over, let me know." She said, when my Iddah was over, I let him know. The Messenger of Allah said, "Who has proposed marriage to you?" I said, "Muawiyah." And another man from the Quraysh, he said, "As for Muawiyah, he is a boy among the Quraysh and does not have anything, and as for the other, he is a bad man with no goodness in him. Rather you should marry Usama bin Zayd." She said, "I did not like the idea, but he said that to her 3 times, so she married him." Great Sahih. Chapter 22. If a woman consults a man concerning the one who has proposed to her, should he tell her of what he knows? It was narrated from Fatima bint Qais that Abu Amr bin Hafs issued a final divorce to her while he was absent. His deputy sent some barley to her, but she did not like it. He said, "By Allah, you have no rights over us." She went to the Messenger of Allah and told him about that, and he said, "You have no right to maintenance." He told her to observe her Iddah in the house of Sharik. Then he said, "She is a woman whose house is frequented by my companions. Observe your Iddah in the house of Ibn Maktum, for he is a blind man, and you can take off your garment. And when your Iddah is over, let me know. She said, when my Iddah was over, I told him that Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan and Abu Jam had proposed marriage to me. The Messenger of Allah said, as for Abu Jam, his stick never leaves his shoulder, and as for Muawiyah, he is a poor man who has no wealth. Rather, you should marry Usama bin Zayd. I did not like the idea. Then he said, marry Usama bin Zayd. So I married him, and Allah created a lot of good in him, and others felt jealous of my good fortune. Great Sahih. Chapter 23. If a man consults another man about a woman, should he tell him what he knows? It was narrated that Abu Hurairah said, a man of the Ansar came to the Messenger of Allah and said, I have married a woman. He said, did you look at her? For there is something in the eyes of the Ansar. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Abu Hurairah that a man wanted to marry a woman, and the Prophet said, look at her, for there is something in the eyes of the Ansar. Great Sahih. Chapter 24. A man offering his daughter in marriage to someone whom he likes. It was narrated that Umar said, Hafsa bint Umar became single when her husband Kunais, meaning bin Hudafa, died. He was one of the companions of the Prophet who had been present at Badr, and he died in Al-Madinah. I met Uthman bin Affan and offered Hafsa in marriage to him. I said, if you wish, I will marry you to Hafsa. He said, I will think about it. A few days passed, then I met him and he said, I do not want to get married at the moment. Umar said, then I met Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, may Allah be pleased with him, and said, if you wish, I will marry Hafsa to you. He did not give me any answer, and I felt more upset with him than I had with Uthman. May Allah be pleased with him. Several days passed. Then the Messenger of Allah proposed marriage to her, and I married her to him. Abu Bakr met me and said, perhaps you felt upset with me when you offered Hafsa in marriage to me, and I did not give you an answer. I said, yes. He said, nothing prevented me from giving you an answer when you made the offer to me, except the fact that I had heard the Messenger of Allah speak of her, and I did not want to disclose the secret of the Messenger of Allah. If he had left her, then I would have married her. Great Sahih. Chapter 25. A woman offering herself in marriage to one whom she likes. Thabit al-Bunani said, I was with Anas bin Malik, and a daughter of his was with him. He said, a woman came to the Messenger of Allah and offered herself in marriage to him. She said, O Messenger of Allah, do you want to marry me? Great Sahih. It was narrated from Anas that a woman offered herself in marriage to the Prophet. The daughter of Anas laughed and said, how little was her modesty? Anas said, she was better than you. She offered herself in marriage to the Prophet. Great Sahih. Chapter 26. A woman doing istikhara if she receives a proposal of marriage. It was narrated that Anas said, when the Iddah of Zainab was over, the Messenger of Allah said to Zayd, propose marriage to her on my behalf. Zayd went and said, O Zainab, rejoice, for the Messenger of Allah has sent me to you to propose marriage on his behalf. She said, I will not do anything until I consult my Lord. She went to her prayer place and Quran was revealed. Then the Messenger of Allah came and entered upon her without any formalities. Great Sahih. Anas bin Malik said, Zainab bint Jahsh used to boast to the other wives of the Prophet and say, Allah married me to him from above the heavens, and the verse of hijab was revealed concerning her. Great Sahih. Chapter 27. How to do istikhara. It was narrated that Jabir bin Abdullah said, the Messenger of Allah used to teach his companions to perform istikhara in all matters, just as he used to teach them surahs from the Quran. He said, if any one of you is deliberating about a decision he has to make, then let him pray 2 rakahs of non-obligatory prayer, then say, Allahumma inni astakhiruka bi ilmika wa astakdiruka bi kudratika wa asaluka min fadlika fa innaka takdiru wa la akdir wa talamu wa la alam wa anta alam al-guyub. Allahumma in kunta talamu ana hadhal amra kairun li fi dini wa mashi wa akibati amri fagdurhu li wa yasirhu li tuma barik li fihi. Allahumma wa in kunta talmu anahu sharun li fi dini wa mashi wa akibati amri fasrifu ani wasrifni anhu waktur li al-kair haytu kana thumma radini bihi. O Allah, I seek your guidance in making a choice by virtue of your knowledge, and I seek ability by virtue of your power, and I ask you of your great bounty. You have power, I have none, and you know, I know not. You are the knower of hidden things. O Allah, if in your knowledge this matter, then it should be mentioned by name, is good for me in my religion, my livelihood, and my affairs, or both in this world and in the hereafter. Then ordain it for me, make it easy for me, and bless it for me. And if in your knowledge it is bad for me and for my religion, my livelihood, and my affairs, or for me both, in this world and the next, then turn it away from me, and turn me away from it. And ordain for me the good wherever it may be, and make me pleased with it. Great Sahih. Chapter 28. A son conducting the marriage for his mother. It was narrated from Salama that when her iddah had ended, Abu Bakr sent word to her proposing marriage to her. But she did not marry him. Then the Messenger of Allah sent Umar bin al-Khattab with a proposal of marriage. She said, tell the Messenger of Allah that I am a jealous woman, and that I have sons, and none of my guardians are present. He went to the Messenger of Allah and told him that. He said, go back to her and tell her, as for your saying that you are a jealous woman, I will pray to Allah for you to take away your jealousy. As for your saying that you have sons, your sons will be taken care of. And as for your saying that none of your guardians are present, none of your guardians present or absent would object to that. She said to her son, O Umar, get up and perform the marriage to the Messenger of Allah. So he performed the marriage. Great Hassan. Chapter 29. A man marrying off his young daughter. It was narrated from Aisha that the Messenger of Allah married her when she was 6 years old, and consummated the marriage with her when she was 9. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Aisha said, "The Messenger of Allah married me when I was 7 years old, and he consummated the marriage with me when I was 9. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Abu Ubaidah said, Aisha said, "The Messenger of Allah married me when I was 9, and I lived with him for 9 years. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Aisha that the Messenger of Allah married her when she was 9, and he died when she was 18 years old. Great Sahih. Chapter 30. A man marrying off his granddaughter. Marrying off his granddaughter. Umar bin al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated, Hafsa bint Umar became single when her husband Kunais bin Hudafa as-Sami died. He was one of the companions of the Prophet, and he died in Al-Madinah. Umar said, I went to Uthman bin Affan and offered Hafsa in marriage to him. I said, if you wish, I will marry you to Hafsa bint Umar. He said, I will think about it. A few days passed, then I met him, and he said, it seems that I do not want to get married at the moment. Umar said, then I met Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, may Allah be pleased with him, and said, if you wish, I will marry Hafsa bint Umar to you. Abu Bakr remained silent and did not give me any answer, and I felt more upset with him than I had with Uthman. Several days passed, then the Messenger of Allah proposed marriage to her, and I married her to him. Abu Bakr met me and said, perhaps you felt upset with me when you offered Hafsa in marriage to me, and I did not give any answer, and I did not give you any answer. I said yes. He said, nothing prevented me from giving you an answer when you made the offer to me, except the fact that I had heard the Messenger of Allah speak of her, and I did not want to disclose the secret of the Messenger of Allah. If he had left her, then I would have married her. Great Sahih. Chapter 31. Asking a virgin for permission with regard to marriage. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas that the Messenger of Allah said, a previously married woman has more right to decide about herself with regard to marriage than her guardian, and a virgin should be asked for permission with regard to marriage, and her permission is her silence. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas that the Prophet said, a previously married woman has more right to decide about herself with regard to marriage than her guardian, and an orphan girl should be consulted, and her permission is her silence. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas that the Messenger of Allah said, a previously married woman has more right to decide about herself with regard to marriage than her guardian, and an orphan girl should be consulted with regard to marriage, and her permission is her silence. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas that the Prophet said, the guardian has no right to force the previously married woman into a marriage, and an orphan girl should be consulted, and her silence is her approval. Great Sahih. Chapter 32. Father seeking the consent of a virgin with regard to marriage. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas that the Prophet said, a previously married woman has more right to decide about herself with regard to marriage, and a virgin should be consulted by her father, and her permission is her silence. Great Sahih. Chapter 33. Seeking the consent of a previously married woman with regard to marriage. It was narrated from Abu Huraira that the Messenger of Allah said, a previously married woman should not be married until her permission has been sought, and a virgin should not be married until her consent is sought. They said, O Messenger of Allah, how does she give her permission? He said, her permission is if she keeps silent. Great Sahih. Chapter 34. The permission of a virgin. It was narrated from Aisha that the Prophet said, Seek the permission of woman with regard to marriage. It was said, What if a virgin is too shy and remains silent? He said, That is her permission. Great Sahih. Abu Huraira narrated that the Messenger of Allah said, A previously married woman should not be married until her consent has been sought, and a virgin should not be married until her permission has been sought. They said, O Messenger of Allah, what is her permission? He said, If she remains silent. Great Sahih. Chapter 35. Father marrying off a previously married woman when she is unwilling. It was narrated from Kansa bint Kidam that her father married her off when she had been previously married, and she was unwilling. She went to the Messenger of Allah, and he annulled the marriage. Great Sahih. Chapter 36. Father marrying off a virgin when she is unwilling. It was narrated from Aisha. A girl came to her and said, My father married me to his brother's son, so that he might raise his own status thereby. And I was unwilling. She said, Sit here until the Prophet comes. Then the Messenger of Allah came, and I told him what she had said. He sent word to her father, calling him, and he left the matter up to her. She said, O Messenger of Allah, I accept what my father did. But I wanted to know whether women have any say in the matter. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Abu Huraira said, The Messenger of Allah said, An orphan girl should be consulted with regard to marriage, and if she remains silent, that is her permission. If she refuses, then she is not to be forced. Great Hassan. Chapter 37. The concession allowing a murim to marry. It was narrated that Ibn Abbas said, The Messenger of Allah married Maymuna bint al-Harith when he was a murim, according to the hadith of Yala, one of the narrators in Sarif. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Abu Ash-Shata that Ibn Abbas told him, The Prophet married Maymuna when he was a murim. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas that the Prophet married Maymuna when he was a murim, and she appointed Al-Abbas in charge of her marriage, and he married her to him. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas that the Messenger of Allah married Maymuna when he was a murim. Great Sahih. Chapter 38. Prohibition of marriage for the murim. Uthman bin Affan, may Allah be pleased with him, said, The Messenger of Allah said, The murim should not get married, or arrange a marriage for someone else, or propose marriage. Great Sahih. Uthman bin Affan, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated that the Prophet said, The murim should not get married, arrange a marriage for someone else, nor propose marriage. Great Sahih. Chapter 39. What is recommended to say on the occasion of marriage. It was narrated that Abdullah said, "The Messenger of Allah taught us the tashahhud for Salah and the tashahhud upon Al-Hajjah." He said, "The tashahhud upon the occasion of marriage is Alhamdulillahi nasta'inahu wa nastaghfiruhu wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina man yaddi illahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil illahu fala hadiya lahu wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu." Praise be to Allah. We seek His help and His forgiveness. We seek refuge with Allah from the evil of our own souls. Whomsoever Allah guides will never be led astray, and whomsoever Allah leaves astray, no one can guide. I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is His slave and messenger. Then he recited 3 verses. Great Daif. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas that a man spoke to the Prophet about something, and the Prophet said, "Innal hamda lillahi namaduhu wa nasta'inahu man yadi illahi ilahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil ilahu fala hadiya lahu wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallahu wa dahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abdahu wa rasuluhu. Amma ba'd. Praise be to Allah, we seek His help. Whomsoever Allah guides will never be led astray, and whomsoever Allah leaves astray, no one can guide. I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship but Allah, alone with no partners, and I bear witness that Muhammad is His slave and messenger. To proceed. Great Sahih. Chapter 40. What is disliked in the Khutbah? It was narrated that Adi bin Hatim said, 2 men recited a tashahhud before the Prophet, and one of them said, "Whoever obeys Allah and His messenger has been guided aright, and whoever disobeys them has gone astray." The messenger of Allah said, "What a bad speaker you are." Great Sahih. Chapter 41. The words by which the marriage tie is completed. Sa'al bin Sa'd said, "I was among the people with the Prophet when a woman stood up and said, 'O Messenger of Allah, she has offered herself in marriage to you, so see what you think of her.' He remained silent, and the Prophet did not give any answer. Then she stood up again and said, 'O Messenger of Allah, she has offered herself in marriage to you, so see what you think of her.' A man stood up and said, 'Marry her to me, O Messenger of Allah.' He said, 'Do you have anything?' He said, 'No.' He said, 'Go and look, even if it is just an iron ring.' So he went and looked. Then he came and said, 'I could not find anything, not even an iron ring.' He said, 'Have you memorized anything of the Quran?' He said, 'Yes, Surah such and such and Surah such and such.' He said, 'I will marry you to her on the basis of what you have memorized of the Quran.' Great Sahih. Chapter 42. Conditions in marriage. It was narrated from Utbah bin Amir that the Messenger of Allah said, The conditions that are most deserving of fulfillment are those by means of which the private parts become allowed to you. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Utbah bin Amir that the Messenger of Allah said, "The conditions that are most deserving of fulfillment are those by means of which the private parts become permitted to you." Great Sahih. Chapter 43. The type of marriage after which a thrice divorced woman may return to her first husband. It was narrated that Aisha said, "The wife of Rifa came to the Messenger of Allah and said, 'Rifa divorced me and made it irrevocable. Then I married Abdurrahman bin As-Subair, and what he has is like the fringe of a garment.' The Messenger of Allah smiled and said, 'Do you want to go back to Rifa?' 'No, not until he, Abdurrahman, tastes your sweetness, and you taste his sweetness.' Great Sahih. Chapter 44. A stepdaughter who is in one's care is forbidden for marriage. Urwa narrated that Zainab bint Abi Salama, whose mother was Salama, the wife of the Prophet, told him that Habiba bint Abi Sufyan told her that she said, "O Messenger of Allah, marry my sister, the daughter of Abu Sufyan." She said, "The Messenger of Allah said, 'Would you like that?' I said, 'Yes. I do not have you all to myself, and I would like to share this goodness with my sister.' The Prophet said, 'Your sister is not permissible for me to marry.' I said, 'By Allah, O Messenger of Allah, we have been saying that you want to marry Dura bint Abi Salama.' He said, 'The daughter of Salama?' I said, 'Yes.' He said, 'By Allah, even if she were not my stepdaughter, who is in my care, she would not be permissible for me to marry, because she is the daughter of my brother through breastfeeding. Tuwayba breastfed Abu Salama and I, so do not offer your daughters or sisters to me in marriage." Great Sahih. Chapter 46. The prohibition of being married to both a mother and daughter. It was narrated from Zainab bint Abi Salama that Habiba, the wife of the Prophet, said, "O Messenger of Allah, marry the daughter of my father," meaning her sister. The Messenger of Allah said, "Would you like that?" She said, "Yes, I do not have you all to myself, and I would like to share this goodness with my sister." The Prophet said, "That is not permissible for me." Habiba said, "O Messenger of Allah, by Allah, we have been saying that you want to marry Dura bin Abi Salama bint." He said, "The daughter of Salama?" I said, "Yes." He said, "By Allah, even if she were not my stepdaughter, who is in my care, she would not be permissible for me to marry, because she is the daughter of my brother through breastfeeding. Tuwayba breastfed Abu Salama and I, so do not offer your daughters or sisters to me in marriage." Great Sahih. It was narrated from Iraq bin Malik that Zainab bint Abi Salama told him that Habiba said to the Messenger of Allah, "We have been saying that you want to marry Dura bint Abi Salama." The Messenger of Allah said, "As a co-wife to Salama, even if I were not married to Salama, she would not be permissible to me, for her father is my brother through breastfeeding." Great Sahih. Chapter 46. The prohibition of being married to two sisters. It was narrated from Habiba that she said, O Messenger of Allah, what do you think of my sister? He said, What for? She said, For marriage. He said, Would you like that? She said, Yes, I do not have you all to myself, and I would like to share this goodness with my sister. He said, She is not permissible for me to marry. She said, But I heard that you want to marry Dura, the daughter of Salama. He said, The daughter of Salama. She said, Yes. He said, By Allah, even if she were not my stepdaughter, she would not be permissible for me to marry, because she is the daughter of my brother through breastfeeding. Do not offer your daughters and sisters to me in marriage. Great Sahih. Chapter 47. Being married to a woman and her paternal aunt at the same time. It was narrated that Abu Huraira said, The Messenger of Allah said, A man should not be married to a woman and her paternal aunt, nor to a woman and her maternal aunt at the same time. Great Sahih. Qabisa bin Du'aib said that he heard Abu Huraira say, The Messenger of Allah forbade being married to a woman and her paternal aunt, or to a woman and her maternal aunt at the same time. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Abu Huraira that the Messenger of Allah forbade being married to a woman and her paternal aunt or maternal aunt at the same time. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Abu Huraira that the Messenger of Allah forbade being married to 4 kinds of women at the same time: a woman and her paternal aunt, or a woman and her maternal aunt. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Abu Huraira that the Messenger of Allah said, A woman should not be taken as a co-wife to her paternal aunt or her maternal aunt. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Abu Huraira said, The Messenger of Allah forbade taking a woman as a co-wife to her paternal aunt or her maternal aunt. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Abu Huraira that the Messenger of Allah said, A woman should not be taken as a co-wife to her paternal aunt or her maternal aunt. Great Sahih. Chapter 48. The prohibition of being married to a woman and her maternal aunt at the same time. It was narrated from Abu Huraira that the Messenger of Allah said, A woman should not be taken as a co-wife to her paternal aunt or her maternal aunt. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Abu Huraira said, The Messenger of Allah forbade taking a woman as a co-wife to her paternal aunt or her maternal aunt. Great Sahih. Asim said, I read a book to Ash-Shabi in which it was narrated from Jabir that the Prophet said, A woman should not be taken as a co-wife to her paternal aunt or her maternal aunt. He said, I heard that from Jabir. Great Sahih. Jabir bin Abdullah said, The Messenger of Allah forbade taking a woman as a co-wife to her paternal aunt or maternal aunt. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Jabir said, The Messenger of Allah forbade taking a woman as a co-wife to her paternal aunt or maternal aunt. Great Sahih. Chapter 49. What becomes unlawful as a result of breastfeeding. It was narrated from Aisha that the Prophet said, What becomes unlawful for marriage through birth becomes unlawful through breastfeeding. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Aisha that her paternal uncle, through breastfeeding, whose name was Afla, asked permission to meet her, and she observed hijab before him. The Messenger of Allah was told about that, and he said, "Do not observe hijab before him, for what becomes unlawful for marriage through breastfeeding is that which becomes unlawful through lineage." Great Sahih. It was narrated from Aisha that the Prophet said, "What becomes unlawful for marriage through breastfeeding is that which becomes unlawful through lineage." Great Sahih. It was narrated that Amra said, "I heard Aisha say, the Messenger of Allah said, what becomes unlawful for marriage through breastfeeding is that which becomes unlawful through birth." Great Sahih. Chapter 50. The daughter of one's brother through breastfeeding is forbidden for marriage. It was narrated that Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, said, "I said, O Messenger of Allah, why do you choose wives from among Quraysh and not from among us?" He said, "Do you have anyone in mind?" I said, "Yes, the daughter of Hamza." The Messenger of Allah said, "She is not permissible for me to marry. She is the daughter of my brother through breastfeeding." Great Sahih. It was narrated that Ibn Abbas said, mention was made to the Messenger of Allah of the daughter of Hamza as a potential wife. He said, "She is the daughter of my brother through breastfeeding." One of the narrators, Shuba, said, Qatada heard this from Jabir bin Zayd. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas that the daughter of Hamza was suggested to Messenger of Allah as a potential wife. He said, "She is the daughter of my brother through breastfeeding, and what becomes unlawful for marriage through breastfeeding is the same as that which becomes unlawful through lineage." Great Sahih. Chapter 51. The amount of breastfeeding that makes marriage prohibited. It was narrated that Aisha said, one of the things that Allah, the Mighty and Sublime, revealed, one of the narrators, Al-Harith, said in his narration, one of the things that were revealed in the Quran was that 10 known breastfeedings make marriage prohibited. Then that was abrogated and changed to 5 known breastfeedings. Then the Messenger of Allah passed away when this was something that was still being recited in the Quran. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Fadl that the Prophet of Allah was asked about breastfeeding and said, "Suckling al-imlaja once or twice does not make marriage prohibited," and one of the narrators, Qatada, said in his narration, "Suckling al-massa once or twice does not make marriage prohibited." Great Sahih. It was narrated from Abdullah bin As-Zubayr that the Prophet said, "Suckling once or twice does not make marriage prohibited." Great Sahih. It was narrated that Aisha said, "The Messenger of Allah said, suckling once or twice does not make marriage prohibited." Great Sahih. Syed narrated from Qatada, "We wrote to Ibrahim bin Yazid an-Nakai asking him about breastfeeding. He wrote back saying that Shurai had narrated that Ali and Ibn Masud used to say, a little or a lot of breastfeeding makes marriage prohibited." In his book, it said that Abu Ash-Shata al-Muharabi narrated that Aisha had told him that the Prophet of Allah used to say, Suckling al-Katfa once or twice does not make marriage prohibited. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Masruq said, Aisha said, the Messenger of Allah entered upon me, and there was a man sitting with me. He got upset about that, and I saw the anger in his face. I said, O Messenger of Allah, he is my brother through breastfeeding. He said, be careful who you count as your brothers, or be careful who you count as your brothers through breastfeeding, for the breastfeeding which makes marriage prohibited is from hunger. Great Sahih. Chapter 52. The breast milk belongs to the husband. It was narrated from Amra that Aisha told her that the Messenger of Allah was with her, and she heard a man asking permission to enter Hafsa's house. Aisha said, I said, O Messenger of Allah, there is a man asking permission to enter your house. The Messenger of Allah said, I think it is so and so, the paternal uncle of Hafsa, through breastfeeding. Aisha said, if so and so, her own paternal uncle, through breastfeeding, were alive, would he be allowed to enter upon me? The Messenger of Allah said, what becomes unlawful for marriage through breastfeeding is that which becomes unlawful through birth. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Urwa that Aisha told him, my paternal uncle through breastfeeding, Abu al-Jad, came to me, and I sent him away. He, one of the narrators, said, Hisham said, he was Abu al-Kuwais. Then the Messenger of Allah came, and I told him. The Messenger of Allah said, give him permission to enter. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Aisha that the brother of Abu al-Kuwais asked permission to enter upon Aisha after the verse of hijab had been revealed, and she refused to let him in. Mention of that was made to the Prophet, and he said, let him in, for he is your paternal uncle. She said, the woman breastfed me, not the man. He said, he is your paternal uncle, so let him in. So let him visit you. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Aisha said, Afla, the brother of Abu al-Kuwais, who was my paternal uncle through breastfeeding, used to ask permission to enter upon me, and I refused to let him in until the Messenger of Allah came, and I told him about that. He said, let him in, for he is your paternal uncle. Aisha said, that was after the verse of hijab had been revealed. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Aisha said, my paternal uncle Afla asked permission to enter upon me after the verse of hijab had been revealed, but I did not let him in. The Prophet came to me, and I asked him about that, and he said, let him in, for he is your paternal uncle. I said, O Messenger of Allah, the woman breastfed me, not the man. He said, let him in. May your hands be rubbed with dust, for he is your uncle. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Aisha said, Allah, the brother of Abu al-Kuwais, came and asked permission to enter, and I said, I will not let him in until I seek the permission of the Prophet of Allah. When the Prophet of Allah came, I said to him, Allah, the brother of Abu al-Kuwais, came and asked permission to enter, but I refused to let him in. He said, let him in, for he is your paternal uncle. I said, the wife of Abu al-Kuwais breastfed me. The man did not breastfeed me. He said, let him in, for he is your paternal uncle. Great Sahih. Chapter 53. breastfeeding an adult. Zainab bint Abi Salama said, I heard Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, say, Salah bint Suhail came to the Messenger of Allah and said, O Messenger of Allah, I see displeasure in the face of Abu Hudayfa when Salim enters upon me. The Messenger of Allah said, breastfeed him. She said, he has a beard. He said, breastfeed him, and that will take away the displeasure in the face of Abu Hudayfa. She said, by Allah, I never saw that on the face of Abu Hudayfa after that. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Aisha said, Salah bint Suhail came to the Messenger of Allah and said, I see displeasure in the face of Abu Hudayfa when Salim enters upon me. The Messenger of Allah said, breastfeed him. She said, how can I breastfeed him when he is a grown man? He said, don't I know that he is a grown man? Then she came after that and said, by the one who sent you with the truth as a prophet, I have never seen anything I dislike on the face of Abu Hudayfa after that. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Aisha said, the Messenger of Allah commanded the wife of Abu Hudayfa to breastfeed Salim, the freed slave of Abu Hudayfa, so that the protective jealousy of Abu Hudayfa would be dispelled. She breastfed him when he was a man. One of the narrators, Rabia, said that was a concession granted to Salim. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Aisha said, Salah came to the Messenger of Allah and said, O Messenger of Allah, Salim enters upon us and he understands what men understand, and knows what men know. He said, breastfeed him, and you will become unlawful to him thereby. Ibn Abi Mulaika, one of the narrators, said, for a year I did not narrate this. Then I met Al-Qasim and he said, narrate it and do not worry about it. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Aisha that Salim, the freed slave of Abu Hudayfa, was with Abu Hudayfa and his family in their house. The daughter of Suhail came to the Prophet and said, Salim has reached the age of manhood and understands what men understand. He enters upon us, and I think that Abu Hudayfa is not happy about that. The Prophet said, breastfeed him, and you will become unlawful to him. So she breastfed him, and the displeasure of Abu Hudayfa disappeared. She came back to him and said, I breastfed him, and the displeasure of Abu Hudayfa has disappeared. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Urwa said, the rest of the wives of the Prophet refused for anyone to enter upon them on the basis of that type of breastfeeding, meaning breastfeeding of an adult. They said to Aisha, by Allah, we think that what the Messenger of Allah told Salah bint Suhail to do was a concession, which was granted by the Messenger of Allah only with regard to breastfeeding Salim. By Allah, no one will enter upon us nor see us on the basis of this type of breastfeeding. Great Sahih. Zainab bint Abu Salama narrated that her mother Salama, the wife of the Prophet, used to say, the rest of the wives of the Prophet refused for anyone to enter upon them on the basis of that type of breastfeeding, meaning breastfeeding of an adult. They said to Aisha, "By Allah, we think that this is a concession which the Messenger of Allah granted only to Salim. No one will enter upon us nor see us on the basis of this type of breastfeeding." Great Sahih. Chapter 54. Al-Gila, intercourse with a breastfeeding woman. It was narrated from Aisha that Judama bint Wab told her that the Messenger of Allah said, "I was thinking of forbidding Gila until I remembered that it is done by the Persians and Romans." One of the narrators, Ishaq, said, "They do that and it does not harm their children." Great Sahih. Chapter 55. Coitus interruptus. It was narrated from Abdur Rahman bin Bishr bin Masud, who attributed the hadith to Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, that mention of that coitus interruptus was made to the Messenger of Allah, and he said, "Why do you do that?" We said, "A man may have a wife and he has intercourse with her, but he does not want her to get pregnant, or he may have a concubine and he has intercourse with her, but he does not want her to get pregnant." He said, "It does not make any difference if you do that, for it is the matter of Al-Qadr." Great Sahih. It was narrated from Abu Sa'id as-Suraki that a man asked the Messenger of Allah about coitus interruptus and said, "My wife is breastfeeding and I do not want her to get pregnant." The Prophet said, "What has been decreed in the womb will come to be." Great Hassan. Chapter 56. Rights and status of the breastfeeding mother. It was narrated from Hajjaj bin Hajjaj that his father said, "I said, O Messenger of Allah, how can I pay back the dues of the one who breastfed me?" He said, "By giving a male or female slave." Great Hassan. Chapter 57. Testimony with regard to breastfeeding. It was narrated that Uqba bin al-Harith said, "I married a woman, then a black woman came to us and said, 'I breastfed you both.' I went to the Prophet and said, 'I married so and so,' and a black woman came to me and said, I breastfed you both." He turned away from me, so I came to him from the other side and said, "She is lying." He said, "How can you be intimate with your wife when she says that she breastfed you both? Leave her, divorce her." Great Sahih. Chapter 58. Marrying those whom one's father married. It was narrated that Al-Bara said, "I met my maternal uncle who was carrying a flag for an expedition, and I said, 'Where are you going?' He said, 'The Messenger of Allah is sending me to a man who has married his father's wife after he died, to strike his neck or kill him." Great Sahih. It was narrated from Yazid bin al-Bara that his father said, "I met my maternal uncle who was carrying a flag for an expedition, and I said, 'Where are you going?' He said, 'The Messenger of Allah is sending me to a man who has married his father's wife, and he has commanded me to strike his neck, kill him, and seize his wealth." Great Sahih. Chapter 59. Meaning of the saying of Allah, the Mighty and Sublime. Also forbidden are women already married, except those slaves whom your right hands possess. It was narrated from Abu Sa'id al-Khudri that the Prophet of Allah sent an army to Avtas. They met the enemy, fought them, and prevailed over them. They acquired female prisoners who had husbands among the idolaters. The Muslims felt reluctant to be intimate with them. Then Allah, the Mighty and Sublime, revealed, Also forbidden are women already married, except those slaves whom your right hands possess, meaning this is permissible for you once they have completed their iddah. Great Sahih. Chapter 60. Ash-Shighar. It was narrated from Ibn Umar that the Messenger of Allah forbade Ash-Shighar. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Imran bin Hussein that the Messenger of Allah said, There is no bringing, no avoidance, and no shighar in Islam, and whoever robs, he is not one of us. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Anas said, The Messenger of Allah said, There is no bringing, no avoidance, and no shighar in Islam, and whoever robs, he is not one of us. Great Sahih. Chapter 61. Explanation of Ash-Shighar. It was narrated from Ibn Umar that the Messenger of Allah forbade Ash-Shighar. Ash-Shighar means when a man marries his daughter to another man on the condition that that man marries his daughter to him and no dowry is exchanged between them. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Abu Hurairah said, The Messenger of Allah forbade Ash-Shighar. One of the narrators, Ubaydullah, said, Ash-Shighar means when a man gives his daughter in marriage on condition that the other man gives him his sister in marriage. Great Sahih. Chapter 62. Marriage for surahs of the Quran. It was narrated from Sal bin Sa'd that a woman came to the Messenger of Allah and said, O Messenger of Allah, I have come to offer myself to you in marriage. The Messenger of Allah looked her up and down, then lowered his head. When the woman saw that he was not saying anything about her, she sat down. A man among his companions stood up and said, O Messenger of Allah, if you do not want to marry her, then marry me to her. He said, Do you have anything? He said, No, by Allah, I do not have anything. He said, Look, even if it is only an iron ring. He went, then he came back and said, No, by Allah, O Messenger of Allah, not even an iron ring, but this is my Isar, lower garment. Saul said he did not have a Rida, upper garment. She can have half of it. The Messenger of Allah said, What could she do with it? What could she do with your Isar? If you wear it, she will not have any of it. And if she wears it, you will not have any of it. The man sat down for a long time, then he got up, and the Messenger of Allah saw him leaving. So he ordered that he be called back. When he came, he said, What do you know of the Quran? He said, I know Surah such and such, and Surah such and such, and listed them. He said, Can you recite them by heart? He said, Yes. He said, Then I marry you to her on the basis of what you know of the Quran. Great Sahih. Chapter 63. Marriage for Islam. It was narrated that Anas said, Abu Talha married Sulaym, and the dowry between them was Islam. Sulaym became Muslim before Abu Talha, and he proposed to her, but she said, I have become Muslim. If you become Muslim, I will marry you. So he became Muslim, and that was the dowry between them. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Anas said, Abu Talha proposed marriage to Sulaym, and she said, By Allah, a man like you is not to be rejected, O Abu Talha, but you are a disbeliever and I am a Muslim, and it is not permissible for me to marry you. If you become Muslim, that will be my dowry, and I will not ask you for anything else. So he became Muslim, and that was her dowry. One of the narrators, Thabit, said, I have never heard of a woman whose dowry was more precious than Sulaim, whose dowry was Islam, and he consummated the marriage with her, and she bore him a child, great Hassan. Chapter 64. Marriage for manumission. It was narrated from Anas that the Messenger of Allah manumitted Safiya and made that her dowry, great Sahih. It was narrated from Anas that the Messenger of Allah manumitted Safiya and made her freedom her dowry, great Sahih. Chapter 65. A man manumitting his slave woman, then marrying her. It was narrated that Abu Musa said, the Messenger of Allah said, there are 3 who will be given a twofold reward: a man who has a slave woman, whom he disciplines, and disciplines her well, and teaches her well, then he manumits her and marries her, a slave who fulfills his duty toward Allah and toward his masters, and a believer from among the people of the book, great Sahih. It was narrated that Abu Musa said, the Messenger of Allah said, whoever manumits his female slave then marries her, he will have 2 rewards, great Sahih. Chapter 66. Fairness in giving dowries. Urwa bin As-Zubair narrated that he asked Aisha about the saying of Allah the Mighty and Sublime, and if you fear that you shall not be able to deal justly with the orphan girls, then marry other woman of your choice. She said, O son of my sister, this refers to a female orphan who is in the care of her guardian, and her wealth is joined to his, and he is attracted to her wealth and her beauty. So her guardian wants to marry her without being fair with regard to her dowry and without giving her what someone else would give her. So they were forbidden to marry them unless they were fair to them and gave them the highest possible dowry that is customarily given, and they were commanded to marry other women of their choice. Urwa said, Aisha said, then later on Allah the Mighty and Sublime revealed concerning them, they ask your legal instruction concerning women. Say, Allah instructs you about them, and about what is recited unto you in the book concerning the orphan girls, whom you give not the prescribed portions, and yet whom you desire to marry. Aisha said, what Allah Most High mentioned here, that is recited in the book, is the first verse in which it says, and if you fear that you shall not be able to deal justly with orphan girls, then marry other women of your choice. Aisha said, what is referred to in the other verse, and yet whom you desire to marry, is the desire of one of you not to marry orphan girl who is under his care if she is lacking in wealth and beauty. So they were forbidden to marry those orphan women to whose wealth they were attracted unless they were fair, because of their desire not to marry those who were lacking in wealth and beauty. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Abu Salama said, I asked Aisha about that, and she said, the Messenger of Allah got married and married his daughters for 12 ukiya and a nas, which is 500 dirhams. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Abu Hurairah said, the dowry when the Messenger of Allah was among us was 10 awak. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Abu al-Ajfa said, Umar bin al-Khattab said, do not go to extremes with regard to the dowries of women, for if that were a sign of honor and dignity in this world, or a sign of piety before Allah the Mighty and Sublime, then Muhammad would have done that before you. But he did not give any of his wives, and none of his daughters were given more than 12 ukiah. A man may increase the dowry until he feels resentment against her and says, "You cost me everything I own." Alakul Kirba. And I was a man born among the Arabs, but I did not know the meaning of Alakul Kirba, and others of you are saying about those killed in this or that battle of yours, or who died. So and so was martyred, or so and so died as a martyr, while perhaps he merely overloaded the backside of his beast, or lined his saddle with gold or silver, seeking trade. So do not say that, rather say as the Prophet said, "Whoever is killed in the cause of Allah or dies, then he is in paradise." Great Hassan. It was narrated from Habiba that the Messenger of Allah married her when she was in Ethiopia. Najashi performed the marriage for her and gave her a dowry of 4,000, and he fitted her out from his own wealth and sent her with Shurabil bin Hassana. The Messenger of Allah did not send her anything, and the dowry of his wives was 400 dirhams. Great Daif. Chapter 87. Marriage for a Nava of gold, 5 dirhams. It was narrated from Anas bin Malik that Abdur Rahman bin Auf came to the Prophet with traces of yellow perfume on him. The Messenger of Allah asked him about that, and he told him that he had married a woman from among the Ansar. The Messenger of Allah said, "How much did you give her?" He said, "A nava, 5 dirhams of gold." The Messenger of Allah said, "Give a walima, wedding feast, even if it is with 1 sheep." Great Sahih. Abdur Rahman bin Auf said, "The Messenger of Allah saw me looking cheerful as I had just got married. I said, 'I have gotten married to a woman of the Ansar.' He said, 'How much did you give her as a dowry?' He said, 'A nava, 5 dirhams of gold.' Great Sahih. It was narrated from Abdur Rahman bin Amr. The Messenger of Allah said, "Whatever is given as a dowry or gift or is promised her before the marriage belongs to her. Whatever is given after the marriage belongs to the one to whom it was given, and the most deserving for which a man is to be honored is when marrying off his daughter or his sister, This is the wording of Abdullah, one of the narrators. Great Hassan. Chapter 68. Permission to get married without a dowry. It was narrated that Al-Qama and Al-Aswad said, "A man was brought to Abdullah who had married a woman without naming a dowry for her. Then he died before consummating the marriage with her." Abdullah said, "I asked whether they can find any report about that. They said, 'O Abu Abdur Rahman, we cannot find any report about that.' He said, 'I will say what I think, and if it is correct, then it is from Allah. She should have a dowry like that of her peers, and no less, with no injustice, and she may inherit from him, and she has to observe the Iddah." A man from Ashja stood up and said, "The Messenger of Allah passed a similar judgment among us concerning a woman called Bidwa bint Washik. She married a man who died before consummating the marriage with her, and the Messenger of Allah ruled that she should be given a dowry like that of her peers, and she could inherit, and she had to observe the Iddah." Abdullah raised his hands and said the Takbir. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Abdullah that a woman was brought to him who had married a man, then he had died without naming any dowry for her, and without consummating the marriage with her. They kept coming to him for nearly a month, and he did not issue any ruling to them. Then he said, I think that she should have a dowry like that of her peers, no less, with no injustice, and she may inherit from him, and she has to observe the Iddah. Makil bin Sinan al-Ashja'i testified, the Messenger of Allah passed a similar judgment concerning Bidwa bint Washik. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Abdullah said concerning a man who married a woman, then died before consummating the marriage with her, and without naming a dowry. She should have the dowry, and she has to observe the Iddah, and she may inherit. Makil bin Sinan said, I heard the Prophet pass the same judgment concerning Bidwa bint Washik. Great Sahih. Another chain with a similar narration. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Abdullah that some people came to him and said, a man among us married a woman, but he did not name a dowry for her, and he did not have intercourse with her before he died. Abdullah said, since I left the Messenger of Allah, I have never been asked a more difficult question than this. Go to someone else. They kept coming to him for a month. Then at the end of that they said, who shall we ask if we do not ask you? You are one of the most prominent companions of Muhammad in this land, and we cannot find anyone else. He said, I will say what I think, and if it is correct, then it is from Allah alone, with no partner, and if it is wrong, then it is from me and from the shaitan, and Allah and His Messenger have nothing to do with it. I think she should be given a dowry like that of her peers, and no less, with no injustice, and she may inherit from him, and she has to observe the Iddah 4 months and 10 days. He said, and that was heard by some people from Ashja, who stood up and said, we bear witness that you have passed the same judgment as the Messenger of Allah did concerning a woman from among us who was called Bidwa bint Washik. He said, Abdullah was never seen looking so happy as he did on that day, except with having accepted Islam. Great Sahih. Chapter 69. A woman giving herself in marriage to a man with no dowry. It was narrated from Sa'd bin Sa'd that a woman came to the Messenger of Allah and said, O Messenger of Allah, I give myself in marriage to you. She stood for a long time. Then a man stood up and said, marry her to me, if you do not want to marry her. The Messenger of Allah said, do you have anything? He said, I cannot find anything. He said, look for something, even if it is only an iron ring. So he looked, but he could not find anything. The Messenger of Allah said to him, have you memorized anything of the Quran? He said, yes, Surah such and such, and Surah such and such, naming them. The Messenger of Allah said, I marry her to you for what you know of the Quran. Great Sahih. Chapter 70. Allowing intimacy. It was narrated from Al-Numan bin Bashir that the Prophet said concerning a man who had intercourse with his wife's slave woman, if she let him do that, I will flog him with 100 stripes, and if she did not let him, I will stone him to death. Great Hassan. It was narrated from Al-Numan bin Bashir that a man called Abdur Rahman bin Hunayn or Yunbas Kurkur had intercourse with his wife's slave woman, and it was brought to Al-Numan bin Bashir. He said, I will pass the same judgment concerning her as the Messenger of Allah did. if she let you do that. I will flog you, but if she did not let you do that, I will stone you to death. She had let him do that, so he flogged him with 100 stripes. One of the narrators, Qatada, said, I wrote to Habib bin Salim and he wrote back to me with this information. Great Hassan. It was narrated from An-Nu'man bin Bashir that the Messenger of Allah said, concerning a man who had intercourse with his wife's slave woman, if she let him do that, I will flog him with 100 stripes, and if she did not let him do that, I will stone him to death. Great Hassan. It was narrated that Salama bin al-Muhabbak said, the Prophet passed judgment concerning a man who had intercourse with his wife's slave woman. If he forced her, then she is free, and he has to give her mistress a similar slave as a replacement. If she obeyed him in that, then she belongs to him, and he has to give her mistress a similar slave as a replacement. Great Hassan. It was narrated from Salama bin al-Muhabbak that a man had intercourse with a slave woman belonging to his wife and was brought to the Messenger of Allah. He said, if he forced her, then she is free at his expense, and he has to give her mistress a similar slave as a replacement. If she obeyed him in that, then she belongs to her mistress, and he has to give her mistress a similar slave as well. Great Hassan. Chapter 71. The prohibition of mutta, temporary marriage. It was narrated from Al-Hassan and Abdullah, the sons of Muhammad, from their father, that Ali heard that a man did not see anything wrong with mutta, temporary marriage. He said, you are confused. The Messenger of Allah forbade it, and the meat of domestic donkeys on the day of Khaybar. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Abdullah and Al-Hassan, the sons of Muhammad bin Ali, from their father, from Ali bin Abi Talib, that the Messenger of Allah on the day of Khaybar forbade temporary marriage to women, and he also forbade the meat of tame donkeys. Great Sahih. Malik bin Anas narrated that Ibn Shihab told him that Abdullah and Al-Hassan, that the sons of Muhammad bin Ali, told him that their father Muhammad bin Ali told them that Ali bin Abi Talib, may Allah be pleased with him, said, the Messenger of Allah on the day of Khaybar forbade temporary marriage to women. One of the narrators, Ibn al-Mutana, said, the day of Hunayn, he said, this is what Abdul Wahhab narrated to us from his book. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Rabi bin Sabra al-Juhani that his father said, the Messenger of Allah gave permission for mutta, so I and another man went to a woman from Bani Amir and offered ourselves to her for mutta. She said, what will you give? I said, my rida, upper garment. My companion also said, my rida. My companion's rida was finer than mine, but I was younger than him. When she looked at my companion's rida, she liked it, but when she looked at me, she liked me. Then she said, you and your rida are sufficient for me. I stayed with her for 3 days. Then the Messenger of Allah said, whoever has any of these women whom he married temporarily should let them go. Great Sahih. Chapter 72. Announcing the wedding by singing and beating the duff. It was narrated that Muhammad bin Hatib said, the Messenger of Allah said, what differentiates between the lawful and the unlawful is the duff, and the voice singing for the wedding. Great Hassan. It was narrated that Abu Balj said, I heard Muhammad bin Hatib say, what differentiates between the lawful and the unlawful is the voice singing. Great Hassan. Chapter 73. How to congratulate a man when he gets married. It was narrated that Al-Hassan said, Aqil bin Abi Talib married a woman from Banu Jusham, and it was said to him, may you live in harmony and have many sons. He said, say what the Messenger of Allah said, Barak Allahu fikum wa baraka lakum. May Allah bless you and bestow blessings upon you. Great Hassan. Chapter 74. The supplication of the one who did not attend the wedding. It was narrated that Anas said, the Messenger of Allah saw traces of yellow perfume on Abdur Rahman and said, what is this? He said, I married a woman for a Nava 5 dirhams of gold. He said, may Allah bless you, give a walima, wedding feast, even if it is with one sheep. Great Sahih. Chapter 75. Concession allowing yellow perfume at the time of marriage. It was narrated from Anas that Abdur Rahman bin Auf came with a trace of saffron on him, and the Messenger of Allah said, what's this for? He said, I have married a woman. He said, what dowry did you give? He said, the weight of a Nava, 5 dirhams of gold. He said, give a walima, wedding feast, even if it is with one sheep. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Anas said, the Messenger of Allah saw a trace of yellow perfume on me, as if he meant Abdur Rahman bin Auf, and said, what's this for? He said, I have married a woman from among the Ansar. He said, give a walima, wedding feast, even if it is with one sheep. Great Sahih. Chapter 76. A gift given before consummation of the marriage. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas that Ali said, I got married to Fatima, may Allah be pleased with her. And I said, O Messenger of Allah, let me consummate the marriage. He said, give her something. I said, I do not have anything. He said, where is your hutami armor? I said, it is with me. He said, give it to her. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Ibn Abbas said, when Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, married Fatima, may Allah be pleased with her, the Messenger of Allah said to him, give her something. He said, I did not have anything. He said, where is your hutami armor? Great Sahih. Chapter 77. Consummating the marriage in Shawwal. It was narrated that Aisha said, the Prophet married me in Shawwal, and he consummated the marriage with me in Shawwal, and which of his wives find more favor with him than me? Great Sahih. Chapter 78. Consummation of marriage with a girl of 9. It was narrated that Aisha said, the Messenger of Allah married me when I was 6, and consummated the marriage with me when I was 9, and I used to play with dolls. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Aisha said, the Messenger of Allah married me when I was 6, and consummated the marriage with me when I was 9. Great Hassan. Chapter 79. Consummation of marriage while traveling. It was narrated from Anas, the Messenger of Allah invaded Khaybar, and we prayed Al-Ghada Fajr there early in the morning, when it was still dark. Then the Prophet rode, and Abu Talha rode, and I was riding behind Abu Talha. The Prophet of Allah passed through the lane of Khaybar quickly, and my knee was touching the thigh of the Messenger of Allah, and I could see the whiteness of the thigh of the Prophet. When he entered the town, he said, Allahu Akbar, Khaybar is destroyed. Whenever we approach a hostile nation to fight, evil will be the mourning for those who have been warned. He said this 3 times. The people came out for their work. One of the narrators, Abdul Aziz, said, they said, Muhammad has come. Abdul Aziz said, "Some of our companions said, with this army, we conquered Khaybar and gathered the captives." Dihya came and said, "O Prophet of Allah, give me a slave girl from among the captives." He said, "Go and take a slave girl." He took Safiya bint Huyay. Then a man came to the Prophet and said, "O Messenger of Allah, you gave Dihya Safiya bint Huyay, and she is the chief of mistress, and she is the chief mistress of Qurayza and An-Nadir, and she is fit for no one but you." He said, "Call him to bring her." When the Prophet saw her, he said, "Take any other slave girl from among the captives." He said, "The Prophet of Allah set her free and married her." One of the narrators, Thabit, said to him, "O Abu Hamza, what dowry did he give her?" He, Anas, said, "Herself he set her free and married her." He said, "While on the road, Sulaim fitted her out and presented her to him in the night. And the following morning he was a bridegroom. He said, 'Whoever has anything, let him bring it.' He spread out a leather cloth, and men came with cottage cheese, dates and ghee, and they made hais, and that was the walima wedding feast of the Messenger of Allah." Great Sahih. It was narrated from Humayd that he heard Anas say, "The Messenger of Allah stayed with Safiya bint Huyay bin Akhtab on the way back from Khaybar for 3 days when he married her. Then she was among those who were commanded to observe hijab." Great Sahih. It was narrated that Anas said, "The Prophet stayed between Khaybar and Al-Madinah for 3 days when he consummated his marriage to Safiya bint Huyay, and I invited the Muslims to his walima, and in which there was no bread or meat. He commanded that a leather cloth be spread, and dates, cottage cheese and ghee were placed on it, and that was his walima." The Muslims said, "Will she be one of the mothers of the believers, or a female slave whom his right hand possesses?" They said, "If he has a hijab for her, then she will be one of the mothers of the believers, and if she does not have a hijab, then she will be a female slave whom her right hand possesses." When he rode on, he set aside a plate for her behind him and extended a hijab between her and the people. Great Sahih. Chapter 80. Entertainment and singing at weddings. It was narrated that Amir bin Sa'd said, "I entered upon Qurasa bin Ka'b and Abu Masud al-Ansari during a wedding, and there were some young girls singing. I said, 'You are two of the companions of the Messenger of Allah who were present at Badr, and this is being done in your presence.' They said, 'Sit down if you want and listen with us, or if you want you can go away.' We were granted a concession allowing entertainment at weddings. Great Sahih. Chapter 81. A man fitting out his daughter for marriage. It was narrated that Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, said, "The Messenger of Allah fitted out Fatima with a velvet dress, a waterskin, and a pillow stuffed with idkar." Great Sahih. Chapter 82. Beds. It was narrated from Jabir bin Abdullah that the Messenger of Allah said, "A bed for a man, a bed for his wife, a third for his guest, and the fourth is for the shaitan." Great Sahih. Chapter 83. Anmat. It was narrated that Jabir said, "The Messenger of Allah said to me, 'Have you got married?' I said, 'Yes.' He said, 'Have you got any anmat?' I said, 'How can we afford anmat?' He said, 'You will be able to.' Great Sahih. Chapter 84. Giving a gift to the one who has got married. It was narrated from Al-Jad bin Abi Uthman that Anas bin Malik said, "The Messenger of Allah got married and consummated the marriage with his wife. He said, 'My mother Sulaim made some hais, and I brought it to the Messenger of Allah and said, "My mother sends you greetings of salam and says to you, "This is a little from us." He said, "Put it down." Then he said, "Go and call so and so and so and so, and whoever you meet." And he named some men. So I called those whom he named and those whom I met. I said to Anas, "How many were they?" He said, "About 300. Then the Messenger of Allah said, "Let them sit around the dish of food in groups of 10, one after the other, and let each person eat from what is closest to him." They ate until they were full. Then one group went out and another group came in. He said to me, "O Anas, clear the way." So I cleared it away, and I do not know whether there was more when I cleared it away or when I put it down. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Humayd at-Tawil that he heard Anas say, "The Messenger of Allah established the bond of brotherhood between some of the Quraysh and some of the Ansar, and he established the bond of brotherhood between Sa'd bin Rabi and Abdurrahman bin Auf. Sa'd said to him, "I have wealth which I will share equally between you and me, and I have 2 wives. So look and see which one you like better, and I will divorce her. And when her iddah is over, you can marry her." He said, "May Allah bless your family and your wealth for you. Show me, where the market is." And he did not come back until he brought some ghee and cottage cheese that he had left over. He said, "The Messenger of Allah saw traces of yellow perfume on me." And he said, "What is this for?" I said, "I have married a woman from among the Ansar." He said, "Give a walima wedding feast, even if it is with 1 sheep." Great Sahih.